Hi guys, hope you've had a sensational day. Tonight we're sharing 3 top tips to improve your children's sleep. Oh, don't we all just want that? So for all parents with children 5 years and under, I have a question for you. Have you ever connected the dots between your child's temperament and your child's sleeping patterns? Interesting. Many people and many parents don't take into consideration how the two are interconnected. However, experts confirm that they are. Experts also confirm that it's important to understand the correlation between your individual parenting style and your child's temperament. When we work this out, it can make the transition to sleep a lot smoother. So often families believe they just need to wait it out, or put up with their child's sleeping issues until the child grows out of that phase per se. However, during this time the child just becomes increasingly more tired and can actually cause undue stress. So there is actually an easy way. It's just about adopting the right approach to sleep, and when parents do adopt the right approach, it just reduces the child's stress and improves the child's overall health and well-being. And don't we just want that? So tonight we are joined by the fabulous special guest, Catherine Bendai. She's a holistic baby and toddler sleep feeding consultant and the founder of Dreamwings. How you doing, Catherine?
Great, good to be here. Nice to talk to you again.
Or as always. And I just wanted to just do a little bit of introduction. So Catherine will be discussing why a child's temperament is important to consider when teaching children to sleep well. So we published Catherine's article titled "Why a Little One's Temperament is Key for good sleep." So Catherine, for someone that hasn't read the article, could you give us a little bit of an overview? We're going to get stuck into the 3 key questions, but a little bit of an overview, what's it about and what inspired you to write it?
I often see parents who are talking about how they've tried to teach their little ones sleep and it hasn't worked. And a lot of time people literally just go, okay, the child is this age, or this is the problem, and so this is the approach we take. And a lot of the time they just don't look at the child's temperament and how that relates to sleep. And they also often don't look at matching the parenting style up. So it's a combination really of knowing that this is the way you want to parent, this is your child. They don't always, totally match up, but we can find, a way to connect them and a way for it to work well. And that's when you get good sleep, is when you've considered both of it and sort of made it work together.
All right, cool. So I think that sort of answers a little bit to the question that I was just going to say, why is a child's temperament important to consider when teaching children to sleep well? How can, I guess, as parents, we sort of look into this and try and learn as much as we can through you?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of times parents will have tried and it will have failed, and they will just assume that that means that they can't teach their little one to sleep well. And a lot of the time that just is because the wrong approach has been taken.
Right.
So there really isn't one approach to teaching little ones to sleep. There are so many, and it comes down to what is going to work for that child.
Yeah.
And so that's to look at who your child is and who your child is in relation to sleep as well, and find it, a way to make it all work together.
Another question I sort of got before we sort of get stuck into the 3 key ones, can you give us some examples of typical temperaments and sleeping styles that may correlate?
So you have a child who seems to be a high needs type child in terms of connection with the parents. So wanting to be with them all the time, and maybe a very sensitive child. And that one can be a bit more straightforward. If your child is like a really sensitive child, then they're likely going to need a very hands-on, right there support from a parent. If you've got a child who's a very independent child, then they may well want that independent approach to sleep. But there is also children whose the temperament in their awake time and the temperament in their play doesn't necessarily match up with their sleep temperament. So that's what we really have to identify, is not just their overall, day-to-day temperament, but their sleep temperament.
Interesting. This is something I haven't heard before, and it's really, really fascinating to learn about this. Well, let's get stuck into the three key questions. So question number one, how do you determine a child's temperament in relation to their sleep?
All right, so when I start working with a family, I start with an intake form. So basically, what that allows me to do is look at absolutely everything that affects sleep and settling. And that is a really wide range of things. And a lot of that gives me lots of clues. I will actually ask the parents about the child's temperament. I will ask the parents about their parenting style. And those two give me a lot of clues. But a lot of the time, in there, I will 24-hour sort of snapshot of what's going on during the day. And sort of when parents say, look, this is what I've done and this is what the child did, that often gives me a look at what their temperament is in regards to sleep. And maybe 50% of the time it is the same as what the parents have described as their daytime temperament, but the other 50% it can differ. And what the parents think will work and what the parents would like to do does not necessarily match up and be the same in terms of the child's temperament. So yeah, I definitely look at that and how they're reacting to things. So it can be something that you haven't really considered before, but once we get an idea of the big picture, it becomes a bit more apparent.
Okay, so I've got a question for you. I was speaking to a good friend of mine a couple of days ago, and her little girl is 2 years old. We're not sure if she's just going through the terrible twos at the moment, but she just doesn't like going to bed early, and then she, of course, is happy to go to bed late, and then wakes up, really, really sort of tired and grumpy in the morning, but it's a continuous pattern that she's becoming more and more tired. So is this what you're talking about with the temperament and the fact that she just doesn't like to go to bed early? Is this what you meant by the temperament?
Temperament is more in terms of the child and how they react in certain situations. That sounds like a very strong-willed little girl.
Right.
So with that one, it's probably going to require a firmer approach. The fact that the parents say that she's not happy to go to sleep early, but she's happy to go to sleep late, is resulting in her being stuck in this overtired cycle. And so that's a point where it doesn't necessarily be that child's needs are to go to sleep late. That child's needs are for the parents to be firm and set boundaries. And that boundary is in relation to early sleep, because early sleep also results in going to sleep in their natural sleep windows, where their body is actually primed for sleep in terms of the levels of hormones and stuff like that. So yeah, that need is a child who needs firm boundaries.
Okay, so give me a case scenario on a typical sort of child or case scenario that you have with a temperament and a sleep pattern, how a parent would be able to identify that match.
Okay, so sometimes it can be a bit hard for the parents to see it because they are there every day, and so that what they think of and what they feel in terms of temperament is really what's going on during the daytime and not necessarily at night. So often I will see a child who parents are sure that this child is going to be, well, they want to take a hands-on approach. They want to be right there with the child. And that is often a very, a great approach to take. But if this child indicated to me that they are very attached to their mum, so they really like, being really close to their mum day and night. And so the mum thinks, okay, me taking an approach where I'm very close with this child is going to see great results. But often that child is thinking, why am I not getting the response I get during the day, which is maybe being rocked and held and just constant attention from my mum? And that isn't always possible as your child's getting older. And so that child actually will get more upset and more frustrated from the mother's attention then at night, because it's not necessarily what they think they should be getting.
Right.
And so that child is actually telling you, Mum, I need some space. Whereas the mum thinks that their child's temperament from the way they react during the day is actually needing them to be right there, and that's actually making things worse. And sometimes if you don't get that match up right, you can end up with more stress, more frustration, and more crying. And quite often, if we take a step back, that child won't cry as much, and that child will actually settle down. What you might actually get from that child is just a little vent, a little whinge. It's not, not a full on cry. And then they'll be able to settle themselves. But with their mum right there, they're actually getting more and more upset. So,
Interesting.
yeah, so the way that a child reacts and I guess bonds and connects with their parents during the day isn't necessarily what they're seeking at night. So we really need to listen to the child. It's about being very baby led, and
Yeah.
your style may be what you want to do, but what your child needs may be something different.
Yeah, and as the article states, it's about sort of understanding your parenting style and their temperament, and actually having that all sort of, which is a lot really, because you may want one thing and the baby wants another, and it's just. Do you find that
Yeah.
that is quite difficult?
Yeah, and I see it the other way as well. I see parents come to me and they're like, I would really like to, I'm comfortable with letting my child settle themselves. I'd like an approach where we've backed off a bit. And it becomes apparent to me during a consultation that that child is seeking out more reassurance and more, they want the parent to be more involved.
Yeah.
So it goes both ways.
Yep.
I get it on both sides. And so what it really is it's respecting what the parents want. So we very often will go with what the parent wants because I let my families choose. But it becomes apparent during the consultation, then we have a chat and we go, well, listen to your child. And then a lot of the time the parents are very comfortable with moving the method because it's what their child has communicated they want.
Yeah. So I think that sort of answers our question number 2. What should parents do if their temperament and settling isn't a match? Does that answer that question, do you think, then?
If you feel like what you've decided to do as your parenting style for settling isn't working,
Yep.
take a step, evaluate how your child is behaving during that settling, and that usually will give you an indication as to what you need to do. So if you're in there and you're right there, hands on settling, you're right there next to them, patting them, shushing them, calming them to sleep, and that child just keeps pushing you away and pushing you away, then you need to take a step back and think about it. And quite often that's when we really, if I'm working with a client, we talk through it because the parent needs to fully understand what's happening. And I'll say, look, I think you might get a better response if we back off a little bit. And sometimes even just backing off for a minute or two and then going back in is enough for the child. So it really is just look at the way your child is responding. They are communicating to you. Everything they do in regards to sleep is communicating. So crying is not the only way a child communicates. Sleep is. And the way they will react to what you're doing in terms of sleep is them communicating their needs and their wants. So listen to your child.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, let's get to question number 3. Now, how does this philosophy fit into your overall approach to sleep and its success?
Okay, so the reason I believe that my approach to sleep is so successful is that I do look at the big picture. I look at everything that can affect sleep and settling. It is such a wide-ranging topic, and a lot of parents just don't think to look at all these things. And that's not necessarily that they don't know what they're doing or anything like that. It's they're shrouded in lack of sleep, and they
Yeah.
don't. I was there. I've been with my own children, and I've talked to other people in my field to get that clear picture because you're just not always able to think about it when it's happening.
Of
So
course.
I look at absolutely everything, and I address everything. But we can't guarantee that everything we're going to address is a problem. But if we tick all those boxes, if we address everything, so their environment, their feeding, their diet, routine, sleep patterns, sleep activity, all of those things, if we know that we can tick all those boxes and we know it's covered, then when you do take a settling approach, now there are so many approaches. So please, parents, do not assume that I'm talking about cry it out or anything like that. There is so many methods to choose, and it's always the family's choice. But if we've addressed all of those things, then settling goes so much easier. And if you haven't addressed all those things, that's when you get a family coming to me saying, I've tried to settle and it doesn't work, and I can't get him to sleep. And that's because something hasn't been addressed. It doesn't matter what settling method you're going to choose, but if you haven't ticked all those boxes, if you haven't covered everything off, it's not going to work, or it's going to be harder on you. Might result in more crying, or it might not. It might just mean that the parents just give in and rock because it works, but then it results in night waking, catnapping, all those things. So yeah, it really is a matter of looking at absolutely everything, and settling comes last. So many people settling comes first. For me, it comes last. And if we, do what we're doing with covering all our bases, sometimes settling isn't even needed.
So the things you look at, so I was doing them before. So when you look at the holistic approach, it sort of combines what in particular again? It combines.
There's a lot of things, but I usually combine them into, when I'm working on my consults, into sort of a few main areas. So there's feeding.
Yep.
So that totally depends on the child's age. So that's breastfeeding, bottle feeding, solids. And it also includes something I specialize in, which is diet. And there's foods that can affect sleep.
Yep.
Then their environment, very big sort of topic, from what your child wears in clothing to their room as a whole.
Wow.
That's a really big. Then we've got their routine and their sleep pattern. And then we come down to settling. So a lot of that means sleep aid, having a look at how their sleep aids are, like good, bad ones, what the parents are doing, how the child responds in terms of that, and coming up with a plan there. And as I said, that's the last step, and sometimes we don't even need it.
Yeah. What about the air quality and that sort of stuff in their room too? To have like one of these sort of, here's one I prepared earlier, like vaporizer sort of things.
Honestly, no, not necessarily needed. I see a lot that parents may have a white noise attached to it, and it's actually the white noise that's helpful as opposed to the actual like vaporizer. I'm not big on essential oils. I know a lot of parents are, but I think you have to be very careful in which ones you use with children and levels and things like that, which is why I don't really go there. I believe it's supplementary. It's not going to solve the problem. Vaporizers, cool mist vaporizers are great when your child's unwell, but yeah, not necessary in the big picture.
In day to day. Yeah. Well, look, you've given us some really incredible insights today and lots of things to think about. If parents have got any other questions, because it is, I guess, for a lot of parents, a new way of thinking and looking at sleep.
And a lot of parents find it hard to wrap their head around it, especially when they're going, well, what does affect sleep? Because they're like, well, I fed them, they're full, and things like that. But it does go a lot deeper than that.
Yeah.
And not children. You've got some children who will sleep regardless of the circumstances, but this is for the children who are sensitive to things. And that sensitivity can arise when they go through what a lot of people call regressions and stuff like that, which is just developmental changes in sleep. So a child can go from sleeping great to suddenly not. That means you've got a child who's sensitive, and when the sleep cycles appear, those underlying issues come out. They may not have before, but now your child's more sensitive to them.
Yeah.
So that's why temperament comes in. You've got child whose temperament means that maybe it doesn't affect sleep at all. They don't, they'll sleep no matter what you do. And a lot of people will tell you that's their first child, and that first child does like to sort of lull you into that false sense of security. And I don't believe in bad sleepers, but I believe there are more sensitive ones and ones that are just a bit trickier that we have to just work a little harder for.
Yeah. So if parents have got any other questions and they'd like to get in touch with you, how can they, where and how can they find you?
All right. So I'm on Facebook under Dreamwinks. So if you pop Dreamwinks in there, my website is simply www.dreamwinks.com, and on there both of them have the choice of a free phone consult, so you can pop your details in and I will give you a call back. That's usually the best way, or you can shoot me a message. There's plenty of ways on both my Facebook and webpage to contact me.
And for everybody else watching, we'll have a link to Catherine's article at the introduction paragraph to this chat tonight. We're really, really honoured and thankful for your time tonight, and we can't wait to chat again soon. Take care and give my love to the kids.
Thank you so much for having me, and I will. They're a bit sick right now, so I'll go take care of them.
All right, we'll speak really soon. Thanks again. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.